Hello, good afternoon. Now I'm supposed to share this so you can see the screen. Bear with me. There it is. All right. There is the cover of our book. There we go. Rebecca, will you lower your phone? That way we don't get the feedback. Perfect. There it is. Hi, folks. This is a book we wrote a few years ago, Gloves Along the Mohawk. There's not too many copies left. We didn't do another printing. Scott Fiesthumel and I wrote the book together. It was supposed to be volume one of a 3-volume series. Then life happened and we didn't get it done, and I apologize for that. Maybe someday. I am working on a history of Utica baseball from day one to 2001 when Cal Ripken bought the Utica Blue Sox and moved them to Aberdeen, Maryland. But it's about halfway done, so it'll take a little while. But baseball has been in Utica a long time and in the Mohawk Valley a long time. Okay, I'm going to focus a little bit on Utica and Oneida County. There are a couple of players I'll spotlight, which is what this book really did. Spotlight and how they have a connection to baseball. Anytime you have a question, just unmute and jump in. All right, I pressed the arrow, nothing worked. No. There it is. Okay, so it's this one. Now, we have here in the Oneida County History Center a scorebook from the 1860s. It was on display for many years. A good friend of ours, Bob Palazzo, who was chairman at one time here of the board, was a huge baseball fan, and he had a baseball display, and there was all kinds of memorabilia here. And it shows that there were teams from Utica, Whitesboro, Rome, Oneida. Rome has a long history also. Just so you know, the Rome Colonels of the old Eastern League, the Can-Am League, was very, very prevalent in the 30s and 40s. Well, anyway, this scorebook, if you ever want to see it, you come over to the History Center and you can ask the staff in the research library. But it does show that we go back to the 1860s. We had Pro Ball come to the United States, yes, in 1871, and by 1878 we were here in Utica with the International League. Today this is a AAA league right before the majors. Baseball was much different back in the 1800s as far as leagues went. We do know that the senior circuit is known as the National League, and that was formed in 1876. But we here in Utica, Oneida County, we joined Pro Ball in 1878. Here's some pictures of some old teams, including a Negro League team, not the official Negro Leagues, just so you know, but an all-black team from the area. And you see in the top right a very famous book called Good Enough to Dream, written by Roger Kahn, who recently passed away. Roger Kahn owned the 1983 Utica Blue Sox, the entry of our city into the New York Penn League, and he wrote an account of it a year or two later. It's a very, very good read if you want to learn about the only team in the New York Penn League to win a championship. And they were an independent team, so they were not affiliated with any major league team. The other pictures are a little bit difficult to see, summer leagues, amateur leagues, etc. We're going to look today at some players, okay? And the first major leaguer is a guy by the name of Juice Latham. Sometimes he was also called Jumbo based on his size. And Juice Latham played from 1875 to 1884. He played with the Philadelphia A's and the Louisville team that originally was part of the major National League team squad. He was a player manager for a couple of years also. He played some time he had some playing time in Canada. He was a amateur player here in the area, at least until 1894. There's a reference of him playing a team in Richfield Springs that year. So he, that was 1894. So that's, almost a 20-year career. He was a good first baseman. He was excellent at fielding, but he wasn't great as a hitter. In 1882, he did finish fourth in the league in runs batted in, which was his best season of that career. He did spend time after baseball, or between baseball. He took some time off, and he went to work for the United States Treasury. But then he went back to baseball. And in 1891, towards the end of his career, though, he was arrested with some other players because they violated what is known as the Blue Laws. Blue Laws were you were not allowed to play baseball on Sundays. They were eventually the next day acquitted and let free. So that's Juice Latham, or Jumbo Latham. He was called Jumbo too because he was 5'8" and weighed about 250 pounds. This is Mike Griffin. Now, Mike Griffin probably would have the qualifications of the National Baseball Hall of Fame membership because he was truly one of the greatest players of his generation. The problem is it was in the 1880s and 90s, and obviously that's a far cry from 2020 when today they vote on players. It's very few from this generation are recognized. But this Utica native is noted because he was one of the first two players. It's undetermined who did it first because they both did it on the same day. One of the first two players in the history of the game, George Tebow was the other one in Cincinnati. They had a home run in their first at bat. It also should be known about him is that, he went from amateur status, not even in pro ball, to the major leagues in 3 years. Okay. During his rookie year, he batted .301. And even, whatever year of baseball it is, to hit .301 as a pro is very, very difficult. His rookie year, again, .301, 142 runs scored. He stole 94 bases. Those 94 bases were a record that stood until 1985, when a guy by the name of Vince Coleman broke his record as a rookie with the St. Louis Cardinals. In 1894, he hit .357 and scored 123 runs in only 108 games. 10 of 12 seasons that he played, he had over 100 runs scored. He was truly the finest center fielder of his generation, too. He really was. He went on to, after baseball, become a Gulf brewery agent and played for their baseball team. The next one, guy I really like, is George Burns. Now, George Burns played his entire career with the New York Giants. Some anecdotes about him, as you can see on the bottom. He inexplicably decided he wanted to wrestle Jim Thorpe a few times. Finally, John McGraw, the manager of the Giants, said, enough's enough. You can't do that. So he banned the practice of the two of them wrestling in the clubhouse. He was a very consistent hitter. He batted .287 over his 15-year career. If he can just focus in on that picture of the bat, that bat was like a log. It was 42 inches long and weighed 52 ounces. I mean, even by that era's standards, the dead ball era, that's a tree trunk he's using. He got his job in pro ball on accident. He was at a game with his dad in 1908, and the Utica Harps in the New York State League were in need of a catcher because the catcher didn't show up for the game. And the coach went into the stands and asked George to play. By the next year, he was a member of the team. So he had over 2,000 hits, was a major fan favorite. He made the NL All-American team. This is before they had all-star teams. He did that 4 times in his career. He was a member of the 1921 World Champion New York Giants. In that series, he batted .333. He had 11 hits in that World Series. I said he played his whole career. I apologize. He did not play his whole career in New York. He did go to the Reds and the Phillies. And then after that, he played 5 years in the minor leagues. Some of these guys just couldn't get it out of their system. Eventually, he ran a pool hall down in Dallsville, and he passed away in Gloversville back in 1966. George Burns. James Fairbank also went by Lee Fairbank. He was from Deansboro. He didn't have a very prolific career. He played from 1903 to 4 with the Philadelphia Athletics, but he did get to play under Connie Mack. He only played in 7 games, went 1-2, but he did play 9 years of pro ball. All right. He also was a member of a Utica team that played something strange back then, was indoor baseball. Instead of a hard ball, they used a softball, and they played inside so they could play all winter. He did play in the New York State League as part of his professional career. In 1905, he won 20 games. In 1906, he won 17. That's a pretty remarkable feat for any player. In between playing, between 1908 and 1910, he went to work at Remington Arms. And we know Remington Arms is down in Ilion. And while he was there, he did play for their club team. He retired after that and then went back at one time during World War I. He went to work at Remington and also here at Savage Arms. He then left after the war movement, wartime, excuse me. He went to work in the insurance business until he passed away. George Detour, yeah, he played 17 years of pro ball, but he had a pretty prolific career as a coach and as a scout. He did play in the Pacific Coast League, as you can see there in San Diego. He played with Ted Williams. Okay, excuse me. And he did bat .314. You know, he was an East Utica boy. And 11 times he batted over 300. 1929 alone, he batted .342. But, you know, in his very tiny career of Major League Baseball, 30 and 31, he did hit .393 with men in running scoring position, which was pretty remarkable. He did go to UFA and also attended Colgate University. He spent a lot of time with the Pittsburgh Pirates from 1955 to 63 and 69 to 86. He was in their system as a coach and scout. Danny Murtaugh, very famous manager for the Pittsburgh Pirates, he called on him to fill in as a first base coach in 1959 when Jimmy Dykes became the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. The next guy I actually spoke to last year, right before he passed away, was Ted Lipsio, Thaddeus Lipsio. He played for several teams, including the Red Sox, which is probably where he's most noted from, and probably the Phillies too. He had, and the reason I spoke to him is he had a grandson, Ted Lipsio. Teddy is how he went by. And he was in college. He was either at West Point or the Naval Academy. I forgot which one. And he was playing baseball. And there's a summer league here in the state of New York that is called the PGCBL, Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, Wooden Bat League. And he played for one of the teams, and I announced games for the Little Falls team called the Mohawk Valley Diamond Dogs. And I went to see him after the game, and he said that Ted was his grandfather. He was a good little ball player too, Teddy. So I had him sign a baseball, and I sent it to Ted and said that you should have the first autograph of your grandson. Well, Ted died in December after a great life. He stayed up in Massachusetts. He did go to Proctor High School, but he stayed up in Massachusetts after his career ended. And you can see there, All-American at Seton Hall. But my favorite story of Ted Lipsio revolves around a guy named Jimmy Pearsall. Jimmy Pearsall was a great ball player. I mean, or an average ball player, but a great name to remember because he, if you recall, there was a movie called Fear Strikes Out and a book he wrote too, and he had a nervous breakdown. Well, Ted Lipsio and Jimmy Pearsall had a great relationship. They were very good friends. And one time, Jimmy had an episode, and Jimmy went to the hospital. And when he woke up, he saw Ted and another ball player who I don't remember. It's in the book, at the foot of his bed with their wives. And he Oh, nice conversation. They were laughing and blah, blah, blah. And after about an hour, they left. And Jimmy turned to his wife and he said, "Who was that?" And his wife said, "You don't remember them?" He goes, "No." And it was Ted Lipsio. She said, "It's Ted, your best friend on the baseball team." What happened was Ted used to stand in every time Jimmy would get in arguments out the community. And before he could get beat up, Ted would step in and calm the other party down before a fight ensued. So Ted Lipsio. Then there's Carl Spooner, and I like talking about him because every once in a while he pops up on MLB Tonight, and he did this year, in this strange year where baseball didn't start till July. And I forgot the name of the pitcher, but his first two starts he had X amount of strikeouts, and it was number one. He bested Carl Spooner, and Carl Spooner's name was listed number two. This Oriskany Falls native is well known for coming out of the gate in an unbelievable way. He struck out 27 batters in his first two games, but he only got to pitch for 2 years. Blew out his arm. Unfortunately for him and the Brooklyn Dodgers, by blowing out his arm, he wasn't able to continue playing, and his career ended at 10-6 with a 3.09 ERA. It should be noted, though, that in the minor leagues, he was significantly successful, especially in 1954 when he had 21 wins and 262 Ks in 280 innings. He could hit the ball too, by the way. Not great, but he was, as most pitchers back then, they were true athletes. Let's see, who's next? Oh, this one's not an Oneida County player, but because he has the most recognizable name probably in baseball, Boots, he has to be in here. I got to meet Boots Day several years ago. He was elected to the Mohawk Valley Baseball Hall of Fame, already a member of the Greater Utica Sports Hall of Fame, as a lot of these folks are. But this alien native came to Little Falls for the dinner, and I got to be his chauffeur for 3 days. I have never met a man who could have fun with the best of them. The boy can drink. God bless him. He was just one of the happiest people in the world. We drove all around the Herkimer, Frankfort, Ilion, Mohawk area, and we stopped at all his old places, and he walked in and you felt like you were walking into the with the President of the United States. I didn't pay for anything for 3 days. It was great for me. But he is just a tremendously great guy. Still in baseball, although this year minor league ball got canceled. It would have been almost he's got almost 60 years in. I think that's how he said it, 50 or 60 years, well over 50. So he did get to be the first hitter in the old Veterans Park. The Phillies aren't there anymore. His best year was 1971 when he hit 283. And he always credits his manager, Gene Mauch, when he was with the Expos, for believing in him and keeping him on the roster, even though probably somebody else should have had his spot. Gene Mauch really believed in him. And then there's probably the best athlete to come out of Utica, athlete as a whole, at least during the 60s, Dave Cash. Now, Dave Cash is a great guy. Okay, I got to meet him I talked to him once, got to meet him in Utica. Back around 2007-8, somewhere in that neighborhood, there was an attempt to restart professional ball here called another installment of the New York State League, and he was coaching the Utica Brewers. It only lasted, I think, 2 or 4 weeks, something like that, very tiny. As a matter of fact, the guy who co-wrote the book with me ended up the official scorekeeper. But Dave Cash, for all his intensity and success on the field, made history, as you can see on the bottom left, as part of the all-minority, all-black lineup of baseball. He was the starting third baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates on September 1, 1971. You'll notice, too, Roberto Clemente is in there, Willie Stargell, a couple of Hall of Famers, Doc Ellis, who's noted for pitching a no-hitter on LSD, Al Oliver, tremendous hitter who should probably be in the Hall of Fame. But Dave Cash was noted for his success also as a second baseman, three-time All-Star. That team in 1971, the Pirates, did win the World Series. So he is another Utican, Oneida County resident with a World Series ring. He did go on to coach a lot too, especially with the Baltimore Orioles and in the minor leagues. The next one is Tom Carrol. Tom had a very brief career, born in Oriskany, but didn't stay here very long. I think he went down to Pennsylvania, went to high school in Pennsylvania, was drafted, and did get to play 2 years of pro ball during the time of the Big Red Machine. He didn't, achieve any kind of noted success, but he did get 3/4 of a World Series share in 1975 and did earn a World Series ring because he pitched during that time. He was mostly a minor league pitcher, successful, 51-33 with a 3.38 ERA. He did have a no-hitter in the minor leagues. It's noted two things too, is that he made his major league debut against, I think it was the St. Louis Cardinals, and he faced off a guy named Bob Forsch. And Bob had a very solid career as a ball player. He's passed on now. But Bob Forsch and him were both making their major league debut that day. So it was a very interesting game, I'm sure, in 1974. I was only just 2 months old, or a day short of that, so I didn't get to see it. I wasn't allowed to stay up. He did win that game, by the way. He is working in nanotech now, down in Georgetown area. So he's at the forefront of a new line, especially the nanotech stuff we have going on up here in SUNY Tech area. SUNY Poly, it's not called SUNY Tech. Now, Chris Jones was born here but didn't stay here. He went out to Liverpool for high school. He did play 19 seasons. He was a solid minor league polo player, did put 9 years, or did appear in 9 major league seasons. He did play with the Mets and the Reds, etc. But one of the neat things about him is he was part of the Rockies' first team. When the Major League Baseball had expanded, they added teams in Arizona and Colorado. I think it was 1991-ish, and they started in 1993, and he was part of the original Rocky lineup. So that's pretty cool to have a Utica native part of history. Now, the Mills family, I really wish Scott was here because Scott was an expert on the Mills family, is an expert on the Mills family. He wrote a book on them, and you should get a copy because it's a great, great book. It focuses on Billy, the clown you see on the pole, baseball bat. But it covers Wee Willie on the bottom left and Art Mills in the top right, or top left on the right-hand side. No, I'm sorry, he's on the left-hand side. That's his son, I think, on the right. And the Mills family has been in baseball, or had been in baseball, a long time. Wee Willie played in 1899 and 1900. He went 47-26 as a pitcher during his time in the New York State League. I'm sorry, he pitched in 1901 in the New York Giants. His 1899-1900, that was here in the New York State. He appeared in 2 games for the New York Giants. I do mix these guys up a little bit, even though I did know Billy, so that was pretty cool. And Art played in 27 and 28 with the Boston Braves. We have a couple of Uticans that were members of that. There is still a Boston Braves historical association that you can become a member of and learn about some of these folks. And Art, he only went 0-1 with 45 innings pitched and 7 strikeouts. He got into 19 games. But his note to fame is that in 1945, he was a member of the coaching staff, the only coach other than the manager on the 1945 Detroit Tigers. And being on the 1945 Detroit Tigers, he was part of the team that won the World Series. Now, we understand that between 41 and 42, 43, 44, and 45, most of the major leaguers had left. The quality of baseball, they say, was lower, diminished because many of the stars had been in the service. Either way, though, he is lucky to have achieved a World Series ring. He did play in the minor leagues from 1924 to 34. He played semi-pro ball from 1935 to 43. He coached in the Pacific Coach League up until 1951. Nice story about him, though, is he joined World War I, joined the service, and had to get discharged because he lied. He was only 16 years old. And then his son, Billy, tried his hand at baseball, didn't work, so he became what is known as a baseball comedian. A World War II vet himself, he he was at a game one time, there was a rain delay, and he went out and he started to clown around, and people laughed, and he said, do this. So he became a baseball, quote-unquote, clown. His biggest claim to fame is the fact that he was a great imitator of Babe Ruth, and he would mimic his famous 1932 World Series called shot. He was so beloved that minor league baseball awarded him only the 4th medal of its National Baseball Congress, and that medal had been around for like 20 years prior to him, and only given out 4 times. He also appeared on the Kate Smith Show to bring his show there. The next one is Mark Lemke. A lot of people know Mark. Mark's from Whitesboro. And Mark Lemke earned a lot of fame. He was a Notre Damer, part of their Notre Dame High School, part of their 1982 New York State Championship team. And then after that, he did go through the minor leagues with the Braves, and he ended up playing second baseman. Not your average ball player. He's a very tiny guy. Scrappy, though. One time, Bobby Cox, his manager with the Braves, during that run of 1991, 2-ish, all the way to 2000, during that run where the Braves were always in the pennant race, had always made the playoffs. He would say that a lot of his teams couldn't have done what they did without Mark's leadership. In 1995, he did end up winning a World Series ring over the Cleveland Indians, but he's most noted for his 1991 series. The Twins win the World Series that year in Game 7 after Jack Morris pitched a 10-inning shutout. But had the Braves won it, Lemke, who hit almost 500 during that World Series, probably would have been named MVP. He's currently a broadcaster with the Braves. He did attempt a comeback after as a knuckleball pitcher, but that didn't go very well. Mark Lemke. Andy Van Slyke's, probably one of the better players to ever come out of our area. Gold Glove center fielder out of New Hartford. He went on to a tremendous career, especially when he was with the Cardinals and the Pirates between 1988 and 1992. He won 5 straight Gold Gloves. He was a premier center fielder, all-star, but he was controversial. Okay, he's an author who wrote a book very similar to Jim Bouton's Ball 4, where he exposed the clubhouse of the Seattle Pilots and the New York Yankees. In 1969, he did one in 2009 on the 2008 Tiger season that was really bad. And then after the Gulf War had started, Fay Vincent was the commissioner and made Major League Baseball players have 2 flags on their helmets, the Canadian and American flags. He tore the Canadian one off his helmet. Just controversial. At one time, he was even up for the New York Mets managing job. Van Slyke. Oh, by the way, he has a couple of sons that played pro ball. One made it to the majors, Scott, and he's actually in Japan. The next is Hal White, another Detroit Tiger. He's from Utica, and Hal had a nice 14-year career. He was a starter. He took a break to go into the World War II's Pacific Theater, but he went 46 and 54. That's okay. He was a pretty solid starter at times. Interesting story about his time in World War II is he didn't get into action, but he was stationed in Guam and put on recreational activities for the soldiers. He was there with a guy by the name of Del Ennis and another one named Johnny Vandermeer. Vandermeer some of you may know, pitched 2 no-hitters in a row, 2 games in a row. Never been done before, probably never will happen again. And I think Del Ennis is the last surviving member of the Boston Braves. So, that's a neat connection to Utica. Also, he was the director of recreation, and his assistant was a Hall of Famer named Pee Wee Reese of the Brooklyn Dodgers. His best season was 1942, again, a diminished era of baseball. He went 12-12, but had a 2.91 ERA and appeared in 34 games. He also managed in 1975 up in Batavia. I went there last year to see their squad. They're facing contraction by the current commissioner, who's also from Oneida County, Rome native Bob Manfred. They want to cut like 40 teams from minor league baseball. And Batavia is one of them, and he was a manager there in 1975. Next up, now this guy, again, he's not from, well, he's mostly noted from Dollarville, but he was born in Hinckley. He is Prince Hal. Now, Hal Schumacher was a tremendous ball player. He went 158-21. You can see the 121. You can see the stats there. But what's interesting about this 2-time All-Star is he was part of the 1933 World Series champion New York Giants. More importantly to me is he was selected, in my opinion, he was selected to the 1933 All-Star game. That was the first All-Star game ever in the history of baseball, and he got to play in it. And Prince Hal, who went to St. Lawrence University, another neat story is during the 1933 season, they're on their way to a world championship. During the 1933 season, though, he achieves his diploma, and he goes up to St. Lawrence University to accept his diploma, and the Giants went with him. And they staged an exhibition game against the school's baseball team. They won 12-4, but it was pretty neat. You're not going to see the New York Yankees or even the San Francisco Giants do that now for a player. During his World Series year, by the way, of 1933, you can see 33-34 there, 42-22 with 39 complete games, 7 shutouts. But 19 wins alone in 1933. 19 wins, 21 complete games, and all 7 of those shutouts were that year. And his ERA was a paltry 2.16. Now, the only better pitcher on the team was an unknown Hall of Famer, eventual Hall of Famer known as Carrol Hubbell. You'll notice, too, that there's a photo of an Adirondack bat. After his career ended, he went to work for them, and he was there until he retired. He served in World War II, as you see. In the 36 and 37 World Series, he also pitched. He beat the Yankees 1 game and lost to them 1 game in 1936. Archie's a pretty cool guy. We've gotten to talk a little bit on Facebook. He's a Roman, and a bit, you wouldn't call him a starter as much as he was more of a backup defensive replacement, etc. And he played mostly with Montreal and San Diego. However, he did have, at the end of his career, a time where he went to Japan and played for the Cebu Lions. Now, interestingly about him is that 2 things. One is he did come back with the San Diego Padres in 1997. In 1998, I mean, he did get to the World Series. They lost to the Yankees, but in 1997, he goes down to Cooperstown. Back then, they had an exhibition game on Hall of Fame weekend. It was usually the Monday after the induction ceremony, and they don't do that anymore. But he was participating in what is known as the home run hitting contest, and he won it. That was kind of neat. A Roman wins the, nearby Cooperstown, wins the home run champ. And he was also on the mound when Tom Browning, who also, Tom Browning, sometimes I think about putting him on here because he lived here, but he wasn't born here and he doesn't live here now. Tom Browning was in Chadwick's for a little while and eventually pitched a perfect game. I think it was 1988. he pitched a perfect game for the Cincinnati Reds, but he threw a pitch and broke his arm. And the guy he was facing when that happened was Arquimedes Caminero, another Oneida County guy. By the way, there's a baseball card. I should find that and put it in here. A baseball card that has Andy Van Slyke and Mark Lemke. Lemke is at second base, taking a throw to get Andy Van Slyke out. It's a pretty cool card. My co-author found that. We're almost done. We got about 8 more guys we're going to look at, and then I'll take some of your questions if you have any. M. Roser went by the name Steve Roser. He's a Roman, and he was, again, a fill-in player, if you will, and he told me this story. He came to my house one day and brought his scrapbooks before he died, and we had a wonderful talk and looking at his career. And he said that, yeah, he said, I got an opportunity because of the war. And he went and played for the Yankees in 44 to 46. And then after that, in 46, he went to play for the Boston Braves. Not a very spectacular career, but just a really nice guy. I think he went into the tavern business after he retired, or sporting goods. I think he was a sporting goods up on Burstone Road. And he finished his career with a 6-5 record and 2 saves. So that was Steve Roser. Walt Chipple, Bill Duggleby, and Jimmy Dygert are all from Utica. Chipple played center field. Only had 6 hits and 44 at-bats for the Washington Senators, again, 1945, that era. He originally was a Brooklyn Dodger, but most of his career took place as a minor league player. Bill Duggleby, on the bottom left there, played mostly in Pennsylvania for the major leagues. In 1898 to 1907, he played for the Phillies, the A's, Athletics, Phillies again, and Pirates. He's noted because he's one of 4 players to ever hit a grand slam in their first at-bat. A couple of players, he was the first of them to do it, and he's one of only 4. I think Daniel Nava of the Red Sox many years ago. This century, though, did it. He did manage in Albany in 1912, but he's noted for being what is known as a jumper. When the American League was created in 1903, the Athletics were managed again and owned by Connie Mack, and he jumped to the Athletics for more pay. It went into federal court, and he was one of the players that had to go back. And most of the reason was he wasn't a star or anything, but some big stars left the National League, even though they had contracts. Jimmy Dygert on the right was a spitball specialist, noted spitballer. Obviously, spitballing is outlawed today, but he was a spitballer. And his father, when he was growing up, owned a bar called Dygert's Bar, and they would congregate there after games. But he was able to play baseball. They went to the tavern after. He went up to the major leagues from 1905 to 1910, and he played for the Philadelphia Athletics with underneath Connie Mack. And he was part of the pennant-winning team of 1910. He didn't play in the World Series, though, okay? But because he spent most of the time in the minors. But that year in the minors, he went 18-5 for the New Orleans Pelicans. He was a pretty solid pitcher. One time, too, he pitched here in Utica for the Pentups. That was the name of the team, Pent-UPS. And the Utica Pentups were part of the New York State League and the professional league. And he played here for them. But I think one of his great claims to fame is on April 9th, 1905, he beat Cy Young 6-4 in a spring training game. I mean, the pitching award for the best pitcher in the league is named after Cy Young. Pete Hotaling really shouldn't be on here because he's from Mohawk, but I said, what the heck. Pete Hotaling was a good center fielder, but he did end up playing some catcher, and he is known as the first catcher to ever wear a face mask over his face to protect his face from pitched balls or batted balls, foul balls. And that he did in 1877. He only The other claim to fame for him, and he's from, as I said, the town of Mohawk. He played from 1879 to 1888. On June 6th, 1888, his last season in Major League Ball, he went 6 for 7 in a game, which is unheard of. It's hard to go 4 for 4, let alone 6 for 7. But he came up 7 times and had 5 singles and a triple. Freddie Payne, the next one there, he was a pro from 1902 to 1917. He was from Camden, and he played 6 major league seasons out of those 15. And he was one of the first players to ever be what is known as a platooner. And that means that you play on one day against certain pitchers and another guy plays on another day against certain pitchers. Today, it's usually lefties and righties split against whoever is pitching. And he was the first one to do that at catcher. But he did it with 3 guys. He was one of 3 guys. Jack Warner and Boss Schmidt were the others. He was part of Detroit's winning teams in 1907 and 8, and he played alongside Ty Cobb and Sam Crawford, both in the Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb, probably one of the top 10 players of all time. He did get into 2 games in the 1907 World Series, and then eventually he went on to manage a couple of seasons in Syracuse and a couple of seasons in Newport News. David McKeah, another Utican, he played with Mike Griffin back in the amateur circuit in 1884. And he is considered one of the best players in the New York State League. Or that year he was on part of one of the best teams in the New York State League. And he catapulted that into a pro career. And then back then, Rochester had a major league team called the Barons, 1890. The Philadelphia A's had one in 1891. And then he went into the American Association. Both of those were American Association teams. But the American Association was considered a major league squad at that time. Got into 77 games and batted only .232, but he was a catcher and an infielder. And we'll end with Jim Wessinger. Jim Wessinger was a career minor leaguer until 1979. And from a period of August 9th to September 24th, 1979, he got called up to play for the Atlanta Braves. He was drafted in 1976, worked finally by 1979. He's in the majors. And the Notre Dame high school graduate batted .297 in that 7-week period. And he had 5 home runs and scored 53 runs. He went on. He lives in Syracuse now. And then after that, he finished 1980 in the minors. And his career really was just mostly as a shortstop. So those are just some of the players that, had major league careers from our area. There are probably others that I could have put on here that I didn't do, but, for the sake of time, I don't even know what time it is, 1:14. So that was 45 minutes. That's enough to bore you, I guess. Any questions?